welcome to Sacred Alchemy. We're Holly and Victoria, two longtime friends with a curiosity for all things mystical and philosophical, deeply human. This is a space where we question, learn, and grow together. So settle in and let's begin. So today we're going to talk about the next aspect of human design. And in your chart, you're going to see two sides of it. One will be in red, one will be in black. These represent your conscious or personality side and the unconscious or design side of your human design chart. Victoria, can you explain to us a little bit more about how the unconscious or personality side, so on your chart you'll see it in red, is actually seen and noticed and how that operates?
So your personality side of your chart is everything you are consciously aware of. If you actually look at the sun, which will be your very first number, right? That's your conscious personality. This is your vitality. This is 70% of what you give off. So whenever someone meets you, this is the flavor they're gonna get of you. For example, I have 27 gates. I'm a nurturer. I'm a caring person. So usually if you meet me, I'm either teaching or doing something to nurture someone or something. It's a very common theme in my life. So again, your first number will give you a really big portion of what you give off and what you are conscious of. Now, underneath the sun, you will see earth. This is what grounds your energy. All right. This is what will help you to sustain that life force you're aware of. Now, the third one would be your north node. And if you're familiar with astrology, this is the destiny of your soul, right? This is where your soul wants to get to eventually. So this is not necessarily the energy you need to be currently perfect at, because this is a lifelong process, right? But it is something you want to embody. So if you ever struggle with, not necessarily purpose, but what you're here to learn, right? North node is where you want to be looking at. Anyways, all the placements is what you are conscious of. Now, if you go to your design side, this is your unconscious energy. So this is your vehicle. This part of you operates naturally and instinctually. So whenever you have people that struggle, have this chaos, and all of us have had it in some way or another. But if you're the type of person that have this inner pull and tug, a lot of the times is because your personality and your design side are clashing in some kind of way. And this is where healing and self-awareness and getting to know yourself on a deep level, this is where you're able to balance them out. And that's another reason why I love human design, because that unconscious, you can't access it. But this is kind of like a cheat sheet. It gives you a sneak peek of what energies are operating in the back of your head. Therapy psychologists could not pull this information where now it's just like, boom, it just pulls up on your computer screen or phone screen. I know when I started reading into the design side, even though I might not be consciously aware of it, it resonates on that deep body level. So the left side of your design, your sun, again, this is what lights up your soul. So before we had your personality, what lights up your mind and your body, right? Where on your design side, this is what lights up your soul. So this is that like warmth, cozy feeling you get, right? That gate is something you want to entertain daily and really master that energy, because this is where that sense of fulfillment will come through. If you can master, and understand that gate and try to live in accordance to its positive expression versus its shadow. Now, the earth of your design is also what's going to ground it. So now you know what will ground your, vital force energy, but you also know how to ground that fulfillment within the soul. If you're able to, get yourself to a point where you're expressing those energies authentically and from within, you'll have this really wholesome experience of this lifetime.
It really reminds me of the and I know we've talked about this before, the parable of you have two wolves inside you. One is fear and despair, and the other is joy and expression and love. And they're constantly battling and fighting one another. So which one wins? And the parable says, well, whichever you feed. But what's beautiful about human design is there's no right and wrong. There's no good and bad. This really shows you why you might feel that internal turmoil, that rockiness. between, especially when you think about the external conditioning and external validation of why do you feel like you have this tug of war inside you. Somebody outside of me, maybe it's a family member, a coworker, or a friend, has a certain expectation of me, but this doesn't feel right to me. So now I have a confliction. How do I solve this? So human design is really great about showing you consciously and unconsciously what is meant for you. So you don't have to feel that turmoil, that tug of war.
At least it gives you a sense of direction.
Yeah.
I know in my own experience, I've always been very different. Like, I'm an Aquarius rising and moon, so I'm in my own little reality sometimes. So for me, it was very difficult maneuvering. And even when I would, go to a therapy or, talk to people, it was very hard for me to identify certain things or get that help I needed. Human design was really what validated my experience and just showed me how certain aspects of you don't have to be negative. It can be alchemized, right? And you can make it work as a positive. It showed so much, it gave me so much self-acceptance because now I recognize that, hey, I am put together that way. How can I make it work for me rather than work against me? Another thing I would like to add about the personality and design side. Your personality side, the one you're consciously aware of, it is very conditioned by your life circumstances. So if you think of yourself as a computer program, whenever you come into this world, right, you have completely blank slate. Of course, you're gonna have your own temperament, right? Some kids might be more reactive than others. Some kids can be more passive. Some kids are more introverted, while some are extroverted, things like that, right? Of course, a child comes in, with their own little temperaments, but ultimately their environment is what's going to shape them. So if you think about it, it's someone is downloading apps on your phone, okay? And whatever they're giving you, whatever they choose to give you is what you're gonna turn out to be. So your personality side is also very, very conditioned. And you might not even know how to express certain energy the right way for you because you've been taught your whole life to do it in a specific way. So this is where that experiment with human design comes in, us consciously playing with these different energies and seeing, like, okay, if I try something different, for example, my Mercury, if I try to play this energy in this specific way, and deconditioning becomes so much easier when you have all this in front of you. And again, it's, take it with a grain of salt. That's what's called an experiment, is you play with it. But I know most people that get into human design, once they play with it, they're like, holy crap, I'm so much happier. Like, this is how I was put together to function and live life by. You know which apps or programs to take out, which do not belong to you. They're just simply a product of your environment that you were in. Now, design side might be harder because it's your unconscious, but now you know what you're working with rather than looking at the dark and just feeling for it.
I would think too that based on understanding how your design and your personality really shine through, is that the people who are closest to you, and I don't just mean, by kinship or anything like that, but I mean like a genuine relationship, friendship, spouse, partner, they're gonna see a lot more of that unconscious side of you than your coworkers or classmates might see more of the personality side, because they really are gonna be getting the conditioned part of you because they're also a part of that conditioning themselves. So they're not going to always see, they're not going to understand or appreciate the unconscious, the design side of you, as they will be fixated on the personality side. And that's something to think about as well. When you're trying to decondition something and you're looking at certain aspects of your own personality and thinking about how your upbringing has influenced it. Whether it be school, church, work, the different cultures and societal norms that we're being exposed to or expected to participate in.
When I was saying how it was so difficult for me finding the right people, eventually when you dive really deep, you realize just how conditioned even the help is. So even the health has specific societal conditioning or whatever it might be, it can become even more difficult. You feel very alone in this whole experience.
It's like you've been wearing all these masks and all these hats and you take it off and now it's like the real you, but you're still dealing with all the masks and the hats that everybody else is still wearing.
That's the thing. I realized that whenever I feel like I've took off all the masks, I realize it's almost like an onion. Okay, there's more. And then you realize the work is never done. It's one of those things where even if you say you had this full-blown ego death and all that, like I love that because I do believe it falls in big chunks sometimes. But in totality, you need your ego in order to function in this plane of existence.
Oh, yeah, because we constantly, working with other people in every aspect of our lives. I mean, you think all day, every day, we're dealing with other people. So we need the ego. Just like driving here. I mean, you think just driving on the highway, everybody is just out there doing their own thing and we're trusting them to stay in their lane, to go within certain confines.
I think about it all the time, about the highways, like how everything is so perfectly orchestrated. This is like away from human design. Today when I was driving, over here, there was so much traffic. I'm talking 5-lane highway, hundreds of thousands of cars, right? 99.9 of them are gonna make home okay. Do you understand how many factors have to go just right? Even when on regular day, there'll be almost...
Yes, those near misses.
Those near misses. And all these people have these near misses, And yes, don't get me wrong, sometimes accidents happen. It's like, I'm not saying it's impossible, but the fact that we are alive doing crap like that, to me, it's like a miracle of itself, but we are so used to it. We don't realize how much of a miracle this whole... It's almost like in Harry Potter, right? If you're in that, land, you having magic is like everyday thing, like it's not cool, like it's not different. But if you have that magic here, it's magic. It's holy shit, it's magic. Like, what are you doing? That's amazing. And we forget that sometimes. That's how magical and insane this whole experience is.
I can definitely relate to how that magic is real, and other people will too. When you're driving and you realize that you've been zoned out for 5 miles and you're like, wait a minute, was that a green light? Oh, it was. Oh my gosh, I was on autopilot. Like, what a shared human magical experience that is. That is
and
the
scary.
unconscious driving.
Yeah, and how many people do that? And again, most of us make it home okay somehow.
We make it home.
It's insane.
So a really great challenge for all of us with this part and aspect of our human design is finding a really good balance between your personality and your design. So truly mastering the personality side of you, so what you're projecting and involving when you're communicating with other people external from you, is really important so that you can allow that unconscious side of you to really guide you, propel you forward in life. This way you're not spending too much time getting hung up on all those little distractions that keep you maybe upset or unhappy, or even you could be happy. I mean, it's not that you necessarily have to be unhappy to recognize that it's something, a part of your personality. But if you're the yes man, you just always say yes to anything and everything, you can really burn yourself out. And you'll find yourself serving and doing for others. Maybe that's not being reciprocated in return. And you're burning yourself out and you're like, well, why? I'm being so great to other people, but are you really balancing it with your unconscious side of knowing when to say yes and when to say no? Do you have anything else to add?
Right. Do you know serenity prayer? Like, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this is where this really prayer is perfect way to describe. You need to focus, like control the controllable. Okay. And in this case, personality, this is what you are aware of and you have power over. So when it comes to deconditioning, this is what, the big focus is. This way, you have the controllable under control, like the external factors. So it can be your environment or the way you respond. things like that. The thing is, design is what knows your way. It's in your DNA where you need to be going, what you need to be doing. This is why you hear, in a lot of movies and shows, like follow your heart, right? Follow your spirit. This is what they're talking about. You need to quiet down the mind, which is again your personality side, and the only way to do it is mastering it. So this is about self-mastery. So if you can master your personality side, you're controlling the controllable. This way you can get out of the way, right? And design can take you where you need to be going. That makes sense.
It really is about, like you said, not worrying about what you can't control, but also identifying and recognizing you can't control what other people may say or do, but what you can control is how you react to it.
Right, how you respond to it, right? Respond, not react. I can tell it.
Respond.
Right. And you see like that wordplay itself, right? I know what you mean, you know what you mean, but the way our minds work is different. Like they're like, oh, that's what you said, bet, right? So just like with the wordplay comes with deconditioning, and respond, don't react. Just that phrase itself makes me like respond.
Yeah.
That means listen, process, and give a conscious answer. Simple as that wordplay, it already helps you decondition the mind. I don't know, have you seen those videos where people put English language and how it has double meanings, like good morning. So our language is so encoded and is part of the conditioning. The more you do this work, I do have to say something crazy. It's gonna sound insane. I speak 2 languages, right? So I speak English and I speak Lithuanian. Because I lived in America for so long, I rarely speak Lithuanian, maybe like once, twice every 2 weeks for an hour. So now my mind, I think in English. But here is what's really weird. Whenever I think in English, this is where my mind is the most chaotic because there's so many double meanings on things and it's so loud and clustered. But whenever I switch it to Lithuanian, now Lithuanian is actually one of the oldest languages and it roots from Indo-European, but it's very, very old. Anyways, it's very different from English and it has way less double meanings. So whenever I consciously switch and think in Lithuanian, my mind slows down. It becomes this like clear river. Like this right. And the more I do it, it's absolutely mind blowing. I really think it should be studied. Like I really do.
Yeah, so that's really interesting you say that for several reasons. One, I wonder if it's the difference between Lithuanian as such an old and well-rooted language, right? And English, I'm speaking it, so I'm just gonna say it for all of us, is terrible. It's such a hard language. It makes a whole lot of no sense. And I wonder if there are other languages that other people speak, they might feel the same way, or if they feel any different.
I really wish I could do a study on that. People that speak bilingual or speak multiple languages, if they can switch their thinking, how their state of mind changes. Because for me, when I switch to Lithuanian, things become calm and clear and rooted. I like that you use the word rooted because it just made me realize that whenever I think in Lithuanian, I think more for my design, what's like almost what's encoded in me.
Right.
Where personality, when I think in English, it's more of all my conditioned ways of thinking or doing or,
Interesting, because I've asked my grandmother's from Germany and I have asked her before, like, do you think in German or English? And she says, well, I usually think in English. I mean, she's lived here, for a very long time. But you want to know what's really funny is I speak German and not very often. I understand a lot more than I speak. But I dream in German, and I talk in German in my sleep.
That is nutty. You see, that's design right there at its work. It's like unconsciously. That's really cool.
Yeah. Wes and Reagan both have told me, like, I heard you talking in your sleep last night, and you were talking that German again.
Oh my God, that's so cool. That is really cool. That's awesome. You see, I dream in English.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever dream in Lithuanian?
Rarely.
Rarely.
It's so odd.
The next aspect of the human design chart, now that we've talked about the personality and the design sides, and if you have your chart pulled up, you'll see the body graph. And you'll see these shapes. There's like triangles and squares and diamonds, and they look very similar to the chakra system, okay? These are our centers, and they represent not only body systems, but also different aspects of our being within our blueprint. And these can either be open centers, defined centers, or undefined centers. And Victoria, would you like to discuss some differences between the open, defined, and undefined centers for us?
Yeah, sure. So, as Holly said, whenever you pull up your chart, you'll see that some centers are colored in and some are not colored in, but they might have the numbers defined, which they'll have like a little circle on number. Even though there are a few numbers that are colored in, the center itself is white. So that would be considered undefined center, where the colored in is defined center. Then there's a third one, which is more rare. That is called your open center. So your open center has 0 gates. There's nothing in it, absolutely 0. The way I like to explain them is you have your defined center. So this is where you have your steady energy flow. And this is what you're giving out to the world. This is your steady energy. You might not even be aware of it because it's so ingrained into you. This is what you are, right? So think of it as a transmission. So if you're a radio station, like the radio tower, and this is the energy you transmit to the world. I mentioned you might not even be aware of it because it's so ingrained into you, but if you ask someone in your life, hey, what energy does Holly give off, or what energy does Victoria give off? Usually people will describe you based on those defined energy centers. This is again what you're transmitting to the world, what you're giving to the world. Now your undefined centers, so the ones that are not colored in, but they might have a few gates here and there. This is your radio. So what does radio do? It receives. So it cannot transmit its own show. It's a radio. Only thing it can do is just let you know what it's picking up.
Yeah.
Right?
Scan and see where's the static and where's the song that you like.
That is something you're receiving. This is where you will have the most conditioning. And whenever you look up your chart, you might recognize that, hey, those are actually areas in my life that are very hazy or hard to maneuver or find yourself in because of its receiving nature. This is where you get most coded, or this is where the world installs things just in you. It's just based on your environment. So by finding these undefined centers, you're able to know exactly where you need to be focusing first when it comes to your conditioning, where you will need most clarity on what is you and what is not you, what you're here to do, what you're not here to do, which will also be very relieving, because then you realize that, hey, it's not something that I need to be giving to the world. This is something you're receiving from the world and learning about.
Yeah, and I think even something my grandmother used to tell me a lot is, you are what you eat and you're the company you keep. And so you have to be careful what not only you're feeding to your body as far as food, obviously, but what are you taking in? What are you allowing into you and be influencing you, and also the people around you? What kind of person do you look up to, and what kind of qualities do they have? What kind of qualities do the people around you have that maybe aren't for you? So if you have an open or undefined center, that can be especially tough to kind of discern.
Yes.
But human design is great because it will help you understand that, and you can be more conscious of it.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Now, there is also another type and this is the one that has nothing in it. So this center would not have any gates highlighted at all. So this would be called your open center. So remember when I said with undefined centers, you might realize that this is where you're most hazy. Open center is abstract, so that's why it's rare. But if you do have it, that aspect of life is going to be almost like a black hole. You can't perceive it. It's hard for you to perceive it because it's so conditioned by the world, and it's gonna be very, and the reason I call it abstract is because you're gonna have this cognitive almost dissonance of information coming from all angles. So the way I also like to describe an open center, it's like being blindfolded and trying to figure out what this object is. So you can't see it, you can't taste it, you just have to only feel it. And that's the only way you can master that center, is through complete surrender and feeling into it rather than trying to understand it, because it'll be very hard to perceive.
I think you make a really great point relating this to senses, to being blindfolded. You can't see it, you have to feel it. You can't really taste it or smell it, but you're hearing it and you're feeling it. Those are the two senses that you get. And you have to basically alchemize and transform it into yourself to bring it forth to all five of the senses, to know what's for you and how that feels. You'll know it's right when it feels good. That's when you'll know that that's for you.
Yep, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And another thing I would like to add with open centers, whenever you pull up your chart and you see those open centers and you know that this is your most conditioned areas, it gives you almost a map of what needs to be your focus when it comes to deconditioning and healing. But on top of that, it's also great because you know what your self-mastery areas are. So the more openness you have, the more you're here to learn things and master things. So this is like your self-mastery areas. And until you actually do it, and I cannot tell you enough, whatever your open centers are, you need to become very familiar of the positive expression and the shadow side of it, because this is where you're going to have the most issue balancing, because it can be so easily persuaded by environment. So these are your mastery areas, and if you can, and this is where the controllable comes in.
Yes.
Even though technically you cannot control those areas because they're, dependent on the environment, depending on many things, transits, moon phases, you name it. If you master how that energy feels and what's yours and what's not, and what's, good expression, not healthy expression, so forth, you will become, the life will become way easier, because those unexpected things that the world throws at you is not going to throw you off your center as easily, if that makes sense. So that's when your defined centers are leading the way, while you're able to manage whatever is out of your control just by being able to stay stable within yourself.
Yeah, and you touched on a really great point too, of the openness also shows you what you're here to learn and to take in. Yes, you do have to kind of apply your own filter, right, for discernment, but we don't want you to think that having an open center or undefined center means that you're lacking something.
Oh no.
In fact, I feel in some ways it makes you more open and susceptible to more opportunities and growth and appreciation for certain things and very specific things related to the certain centers that are open or defined. And I know we are going to talk about that next too, coming up, which each of the centers represent. And what that looks like, what it feels like, and also the shadow side of that.
Oh, another point I would like to make too with the openness. It's a gift in my perspective, and really in human design perspective, it's a gift because those are the centers where you get to sample flavors of the world. So if you have an open crown or open head, you have this ability to receive other energies. It also makes you more susceptible. So yes, you're more susceptible to conditioning, but again, if you're familiar with what's yours and what's not, you'll be able to identify it when it's, not aligning with you. For example, if you have a defined center, I have undefined center. I'm able to tell if you know what you're talking about. I'm able to tell it right away. I can sense your energy because it's open, I'm receiving it. So whatever, those people that try to talk you like your ear off, like they know what they're talking about, I will be able to call you out in seconds if what you're saying is that just some fluff you learned from a brochure or if you're actually pulling it from within.
You can tell someone being genuinely knowledgeable and if they're regurgitating.
Exactly. And if it's authentic or not. With an open throat, I have an open throat as well. So what my superpower is that first I'm able to sample many different styles of communication, but I'm also able to match it. So I find it easy communicating with different people from different cultures, different languages, just the way they sound, because I'm able to meet them where I'm not fixed in the way I speak. And I can learn new ways of speaking or a new language even very easily because of that open center. Like I'm able to easily receive, and because it's conditioned. And some of your aspects will, like learning a language in a way is conditioning. But that's like a positive type of conditioning, right? So it's with open centers, it's great as long as you're able, again, pull the positives and not express it in those shadow aspects. And with open centers, as I mentioned, it's very abstract. So these are those areas where you have to just learn the positive expression of it. And I guess condition yourself into what it's supposed to be. So here's an example, open heart. I have an open heart, completely open, like zero anything. So my sense of self-worth really depends on where I'm at, okay? And for the longest time, I shamed myself and felt guilty that some people are so steady on who they are and their self-worth and they know they're worthy. And why can't I be like that? And I would almost shame myself like there's something wrong with me because this thing comes and goes. I know that it's open. It really depends on the environment. Now, the way I'm able to function around that is by learning that I am worthy no matter what. My self-worth does not vary on anything external, anything anyone says, anything that happens outside of me, it just cannot mess with my sense of worth or worth of another person. It's inherent, right? So by learning this and conditioning myself into honest belief, not just cognitively understanding it, but feeling it like I'm worthy, I prevent myself. So whenever someone comes up to me, and is being rude or not appreciating me or whatever, I know it's them. I know this is not mine, right? But do not shame yourself for not, having this feeling that stays with you. Same with open head. If you are someone with an open head, you will struggle remembering things. You will struggle with habits. You'll be that person that forgets to take out the trash. You'll be the person that forgets and someone asks, hey, like, what did you just read? It might be hard for you to just go in and pull that information. And some people feel, dumb because of it, okay? Because some people are able to do that, like defined heads are able to do that.
I struggle with, I have a lot of empathy for people who struggle with that because I feel like we've been so conditioned that our worth is based on our achievements and productivity. And so if you struggle with recall and like mental organization, that can be a really tough struggle for someone. And you touched on another great point that I wanted to bring up. Having an open center, especially, the heart center, and if it's open, you have learned that you have self-worth, like you are worthy of love no matter where you go. And if somebody has an issue, you've got a rude customer, that it's them, it's not you. I think that brings up a really good point that just because you learn this and you recondition yourself in a positive way, that work continues because we're constantly coming into contact with those external factors. So know that this isn't something that you just say to yourself one day and then that's it, the work is done. This is conscious effort and practice and application to be showing up for yourself. Like just as you would have a conversation with a friend if they called you on the phone and said, I just had a terrible day at work because this rude customer came in. You need to treat yourself as your own best friend and have these pep talks with yourself. This human design, your own chart and blueprint is gonna really help you be your own best friend.
Obviously, because acceptance, I mentioned with the heart center and shame.
Yeah.
It was such a shameful, the fact that it doesn't last. What am I doing wrong? Like, am I not loving myself enough? But realizing that, hey, this is just out of my control. And when that happens, it's 100%. Now that I reflect, due to environment. Like these people that ever made me feel that way were not very good, not necessarily bad people, but they were in their, shadow aspects. So it's almost like a muscle. You gotta exercise it. And with those undefined centers, you have to be detached from that expectation, whatever it is, because again, it's gonna depend on the environment. Strengthening the muscle is what's you and what's not you. So we were talking about open head and not being able to memorize. However, the positive side of an open head is you're able to take insane amount of information, almost like a pool, an ocean. Can I recall what I ate for breakfast? Maybe not. But if you ask me some kind of question and I'm able to access it, I can write a thesis. I just need a focus point.
And I have a defined head center, but I still find that
we also got a lot going on these days.
Well, yeah, let's not discredit how much everybody is trying to juggle. Like, give yourself grace. We give each other a lot of grace because we get it. We understand it. And I love that so much about you. And I have to say, I think we're all becoming very conscious and doing a great This is like a group project.
Yeah, we're doing a good job. Another one that could also bring a lot of guilt or shame for people is crown center. So crown center actually, at least from my observation, crown center is that one center that is almost opposite when it open. People usually that have a closed crown center, they struggle connecting with a higher source sometimes because, they're set in their way. So whenever you have a defined center, think about you're set in that specific calibration. So it might be harder to access that different way of perceiving or abstract thinking, right? But someone with an open crown center, they almost have an antenna on their head, and they pick up, which can be very loud too. So that's another struggle of an open head center, is if you're a person that gets all these, chatter and thoughts in your head and it's just constant and you don't understand why you go into Walmart or some type of store where there's a lot of people or a concert, why you feel so discombobulated almost, you probably have an open head center, because you're literally like a little radio picking up everything around you and you're able to sense it. However, when it comes to spirituality, meditation, things like that, if you learn how to tune in because of sampling and different ways of perceiving, right, you're able to access a wider spectrum, I guess, faster than it would be with someone with a defined center who have to kind of really put themselves out of comfort zone to perceive it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You have to kind of go out of your way a little bit. You gotta train yourself to, okay, let me try this way. And it might feel more uncomfortable than someone with an open center you're sampling and trying. It's like trial error. Your open centers is your trial errors learning school of earth. But yeah, it can be a gift, but also if you don't master those open centers, they're gonna run your life. So, my biggest advice is really get to know those, really get to know the gates. Yeah, because you're going to be affected by transits, especially our big bodies coming through and shifting and moving. This is where, some people might have shame around it when you feel you have these great ideas and you want to start these projects and you have the energy to do it now and you have the energy and everything to communicate it to others and all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. You wake up one morning, it's I don't even want to do that.
You feel like you've lost it forever, but then you realize, I just don't have it today. That doesn't mean it's not coming back. Patience and pivoting. It really,
lots of pivoting.
You really understand that we are constantly students our whole lives and that we are constantly learning and growing. And it's great for patients and making us slow down, smell the roses, like enjoy life, enjoy every bit of the life experience. Is to start with like very broad shared human experiences. So if you have recently started coming out of your seasonal depression like the rest of us, congratulations. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad we could all be here together.
You see, I can't relate to that. I have the opposite. I have summer depression.
You do, but
Yeah.
you still know what that means.
Yeah,
and what that
I do.
So,
I do.
And summer.
That's what's called seasonal, right?
It is
Yeah,
called
seasonal for a reason.
A lot of people do get it winter, and she has summer depression where I I say I'm solar powered, and that's when I start coming alive, and I do get energy and focus and drive to get things done.
But you're also a manifesting generator, and I'm a
Yeah.
projector. So yeah, that makes sense too. Right? You're like a little electrical, like. No, I can do. People drag me out in summers to do things, and I like being in my little cave.
That's how I feel about winter, though. That's how I feel about it, and I'm
Like everyone leave me alone.
everybody wants you to come visit for the holidays and make plans, and I'm like, it's hibernating time. What are you?
Oh no.
Do you want to come to my house and bring snacks?
Oh, another point too is for another shame center, I would say would be G center, which is like your main triangle right here.
That self-identity.
Right, because again, if it's open, you might feel almost like a chameleon without wanting to be a chameleon. Whoever or whatever you are around, you go into feel yourself almost being able to adapt very easily. So, those are the people in high school that, some people would even call like fake or, like how are they able to shift like that? But the thing is there's a big purpose why some people have that open center is because they came here to sample. These are your souls that are here to experience life. So the more open they are, the more you're here to and let the universe take the wheel and just sample, taste.
Yeah. And the shadow side of that, you might start feeling like you're noticing all those other cliques and groups. Like that's a really good way, I think, of explaining it. If you were in high school or middle school, what an appropriate time for it to come about too, right? You start seeing all these cliques and groups and people who have all these talents, and you want to belong and you get along with certain people, from all those groups, but you don't feel like you belong in any which one,
right?
So don't let that discourage you. Know that it's all for a reason. There is a purpose for it.
I love that you brought that up because yes, with that G center, you either fall in the category of constantly shifting or you are a complete outsider. Like you feel like you don't fully fit in anywhere because it's open, because you're able to so easily adapt and shift in various groups. And here is the gift of that is you are able to understand and meet and be together with different groups of people. That's a really great power to have.
That's a gift. That's a gift.
That's a gift, right? Not many people can do that. Not many people can go up to like, this group and be cool with them, or this group and you're able to be cool with many people, which is a superpower to have. Another thing is the center is also responsible for your direction in life. So like how solid you are on where you're going and who you are and all these things. So again, that's another big, guilt trip or shame if you do not know your sense of direction, especially in our society. In our society, you have to have that 5-year plan going. And for some people, it really doesn't work. And again, your soul was like, I'm here to sample, experience. I'm going with the flow. Especially if you have an open G center, you're pretty much here to learn to let universe take the wheel. So if you're that type of person that has a hard time perceiving yourself 5 years from now, it's normal because your sense of direction really depends on the environment, who you surround yourself with, who are these people encouraging you to do something you enjoy, or are they discouraging you? For example, these are the people that can get locked into a career without really truly loving it or liking it because they surround themselves and their friend group becomes this, teacher or nurse. They're gonna pretty much stay in that community and feel less comfortable exiting it out of it,
Yeah.
become more dependent on it, and that would be more like shadow aspect of it. So these people might feel guilt and shame around it, like how come I can't tell where I'm at, what I'm doing? But that's the gift of it, is again your soul. And the more open centers, the way I look at it, the more like badass and crazy your soul is, that was like, hey, like give it to me, I'm gonna weave through it, but I'm gonna sample it all. You pretty much are giving the universe the wheel, and this is what you're here to learn. So if you have your G center open, you're here to connect with the, universe, God, whatever it is, somehow, and learn to trust. And that's like our biggest lesson with the open G center, is about the journey, not the destination, joy, and accept yourself just who you are at the moment. So big thing is going to be self-acceptance, allowing the flow, and trusting the universe. So you see how that can cause some issues there if you're not aware of that and you're not at peace with yourself and surrender.
Think about the conditioning that your upbringing can have on this. So if you have a long family history of, everybody goes to Harvard and becomes a doctor, and you're like, I want to be a rock star, that could be problematic.
Right.
Whereas if you have a very open and supportive, I don't want to say non-traditional, that they aren't so strict and focused that everybody in the family is expected to do this. And it really creates that black sheep feeling and that loss of identity, that wayward or prodigal son type of situation can happen. But on the flip side of that, if you have very loving, nurturing parents, and not saying that others aren't, they really do want you to follow your heart and your dreams and what you're interested in, what sings to you, then even though you have that open G center, you're still taking it all in and getting that just right conditioning to support you.
Right.
And I think that makes such a big difference.
Absolutely.
We're gonna talk about and recap the defined, open, and undefined centers again. So if you have a defined center, this means you have a very fixed, reliable access to this energy, and you're broadcasting it out for others to experience. It's where you're gonna feel naturally secure and grounded and influential. This also provides stability and guidance in that particular area of life that you share with others. So when you're interacting with others, this is what you're projecting onto them, and that helps further the collective, right? So think about an exchange here. Every time we communicate with one another, we're exchanging this energy. Also teaches us that this is a part of yourself that is constant and true. You can trust this. You don't need to seek external validation. So really, until you start learning and thinking about what each of these centers even means and represents, you might not have even thought about it because it's been so constant that you just haven't given that thought to it. You haven't questioned it. You just always known it to be true.
Real quick, it's 11:11.
And that's a wrap.